Hello everyone, this is Giraffe. Today we are going to talk about World War I. The First World War occurred 100 years ago, lasting from July 1914 to November 1918. It was a massive global chaos that went on for 4 years, 3 months, and 2 weeks. This was humanity's first worldwide conflict. Even though the main battlefield was in Europe, many countries from around the world were involved. According to incomplete statistics, approximately 70 million people from around the world participated in the war. The death toll reached about 18 million, with half being military personnel and the other half civilians. Why did the entire world suddenly started fighting with each other? Today we are going to focus on the causes of the First World War. Actually, even before World War I, in the 19th century, wars between European countries never really stopped. After years of fighting, smaller countries battled each other without any clear winners or losers. Eventually, they formed some relatively large powers: Great Britain, France, Italy, the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and the Russian Empire. The countries we just listed are the nations as they were 100 years ago. They are not exactly the same as they are today. Most of them had conflicts with each other. Generally, if they were neighbors, they had territorial disputes. Even if they weren't direct neighbors, their relationships were still tense. Among them, Britain, France, and Germany had the most significant conflicts. Why were their conflicts more intense? It was because these countries had strong navies and were all expanding outward to seize colonies. When you go out to occupy colonies, you end up fighting over them. So conflicts were constant. This was especially true in Africa. Before World War I, the Second Industrial Revolution had turned Britain, France, and Germany into industrial powerhouses. They went to Africa, looked around, and found indigenous locals and abundant mineral resources. They all came to seize and carve up the entire continent. While driving Africa, Britain said it would carve out a vertical strip from north to south. France said it would take a horizontal strip from east to west, and Germany said it would curve diagonally. Eventually, their plans collided. Where they encountered each other, they fought. So the conflicts among these 3 countries weren't just about shared borders, they were primarily about clashing interests. Furthermore, since the relationship between Germany and France was so poor, Germany was afraid they would go to war. Making matters worse, to its east was the Russian Empire, which was also powerful and watching intently. Germany was very worried that Russia and France would join forces to attack it from both sides. So Germany's first move was to approach Russia and propose a deal. Let's not fight. This would allow Germany to focus on France without worrying about a two-front war. The idea was that if the war with France broke out, Germany could handle it alone. Next, Germany proposed an alliance to Austro-Hungarian Empire. This eventually formed the Three Emperors League, an alliance between the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russian Empire. After forming this alliance, Germany focused on developing its industry. This period was right in the middle of the Second Industrial Revolution. The representative energy sources of this revolution were electricity and petroleum. The key technologies were wireless communication and the internal combustion engine. Representative products like the car, airplane, refrigerator, and the telephone all emerged at that time. With no major wars to fight, Germany concentrated on development and soon became very powerful. In fact, the earliest car appeared in Germany at the end of the 19th century. So while Germany was focusing on development, what was the Russian Empire doing? To the south of the German Empire was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and to the south of that was the Ottoman Empire, the origin of modern-day Turkey, but much larger than Turkey is now. At that time, internal chaos erupted within the Ottoman Empire because it consisted of many ethnic groups, and these groups were demanding autonomy. The Russian Empire saw an opportunity and used the accused of supporting one of these ethnic groups to interfere. Taking advantage of the chaos, Russia managed to gain a piece of land for itself. The northern part of the Ottoman Empire broke away and formed several independent small countries, such as Serbia, Romania, and Bulgaria. These new nations all fell under the influence and scrutiny of the Russian Empire. Russia's actions supporting the breakup of another country made Germany a little nervous. Germany's reaction was essentially, until relaxing, you still want to expand here? Actually, it wasn't just Germany that was nervous. All the surrounding countries were worried. Other European powers were concerned that Russia would continue to wage war and expand. To address this, they held a meeting in Berlin in 1878. The purpose of this conference was to restrict Russia from continuing its expansion westward. At this meeting, the Russian Empire reached a common understanding with all the European countries. Russia would no longer expand westward. But Russia was actually very angry, especially at Germany. They thought, "We are allies. I'm not fighting you. I'm letting you develop in peace. Why do you oppose me expanding myself? What does it have to do with you? I'm expanding elsewhere, not into your territories. Why are you nervous?" Germany saw that the Russian Empire was angry and then formed a military alliance with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. What was the difference between this new alliance and the previous one? The previous alliance was like a promise. If France invades me, you won't help France. Please stay neutral. But this new alliance was like a commitment. If someone else invades me, we fight together. This was mainly directed at Russia. If Russia were to invade, they would fight together. Later, Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire still didn't feel safe because Russia was too big. So they brought Italy into the alliance as well. Thus, the Triple Alliance between Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy was formed in 1882. It was equivalent to kicking out the previous member, Russia, and replacing it with Italy. Why was Italy willing to join the German alliance? It was because the relationship between France and Italy was not good. As the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. By this point, in the 1880s, the most industrially powerful countries were Britain, France, and Germany. These countries, in order to sell the massive amounts of goods produced in their factories, were constantly expanding their colonies overseas. Furthermore, their factory production also required raw materials, which came from these colonized places. After finishing production, they would then sell the finished products back to the colonized places. Some of Britain's major colonies were India, Australia, and South Africa. Germany occupied several parts of Africa, as well as Qingdao in China and New Guinea. France also occupied several lands in Africa, along with Vietnam. These were all their colonies. During this process of overseas expansion, France noticed that Germany's developmental rate was getting faster and faster. Germany's speed in acquiring colonies and growing its industry was impressive. Because of this, France felt the threat from Germany was going bigger and bigger. Plus, the two had been enemies for a long time, so France and Russia secretly formed an alliance. They agreed if Germany didn't behave well and continued to expand, they would attack it from both sides. Furthermore, France also made a secret alliance with Italy, stating, "If I get into a war with Germany, you will not come to help them." Italy agreed. This is actually a very strange situation here. Italy had made alliance with both France and Germany. Why would Italy make secret alliance with France? It was because Italy shared a border with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and also had territorial conflicts with it. So at this moment, Italy's conflict with France was relatively small, while its conflict with Austria-Hungary was relatively large. Therefore, they made alliance with France. But the problem with Austria-Hungary was smaller and the problem with France was bigger. They would side with Austro-Hungarian Empire. This is what we call this time and that time. The situation is always changing. There are no permanent friends nor permanent enemies. The rapid development of Germany also made another country very uneasy, Britain. Why didn't Britain like Germany? Because Germany used its connection to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Ottoman Empire below it to build a railway in the Middle East. The southern part of the Ottoman Empire was the Arab region, which had petroleum. Germany built a railway that passed through all its allied countries to reach the places that produced oil, allowing it to constantly transport this petroleum back to Germany. Britain also has its eyes on that petroleum. If Britain wanted these petroleum resources, a conflict with Germany became inevitable. So all these conflicts over land and resources came from seizing them. There was no justice, none. It was all about their own development. The logic was, if you see small petroleum, you develop rapidly, and I will feel afraid. So I also want to see small petroleum and other resources to develop faster than you. Otherwise, I will always feel you are going to attack me. The small countries in Europe could have fought at any time. They had already been fighting with each other for hundreds of years. Seeing all this, they felt worried every day. So when Germany was developing rapidly, there were three big surrounding countries that didn't like it and were suspicious of its rise. By 1907, Europe had formed two major power blocs. One was the alliance, consisting of Britain, France, and the Russian Empire, the Triple Entente. The other was the alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungarian Empire, and Italy, the Triple Alliance. There is another empire we haven't mentioned, the Ottoman Empire. Why wasn't it mentioned? It is because there was always inner chaos happening there. After one such period of chaos, the Austria-Hungarian Empire seized a piece of land in 1908. This act of occupying is what actually caused World War I to occur. Why was this land so important? Because this land was inhabited by ethnic Serbians. Serbia, the independent country, always kept its eyes on this land and wanted to occupy it. But suddenly, it was seized by the Austria-Hungarian Empire to its north. Serbia was very unsatisfied. They felt, this is our Serbia land. The Ottoman Empire was in chaos, and we are going to seize it. But then a powerful military came up and occupied it. The land that was seized is called Bosnia. The real event that caused World War I happened in this land of Bosnia on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. A young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip shot and killed the crown prince of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the heir to the throne, and his wife. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was furious and demanded that Serbia hand over the perpetrators, or at least punish them. But Serbia ignored the demand. Serbia was not a big country. It was quite small. So why was it so tough? Because it had the Russian Empire backing it. So it was not afraid. The Austro-Hungarian Empire knew that the Russian Empire was Serbia's powerful supporter, but the Austro-Hungarian Empire also had a strong backer, the militarily powerful Germany. So neither side was willing to back down. Finally, 1 month after the assassination event, on July 28, 1914, the Austro-Hungarian Empire declared war on Serbia. This act pulled back the curtain on the First World War. In other words, the trigger for the First World War was a murder, though, of course, the victim was a special person. This event is known in history as the assassination in Sarajevo. After the war began, the moment Russia's little brother Serbia was attacked, the Russian Empire immediately sent military aid. In this way, Russia was drawn into the war. Germany, in turn, declared war on Russia immediately. However, if Germany was to fight Russia, it first needed to solve the problem of France at its back. So essentially, Germany was declaring war on both Russia and France at the same time. Germany's plan was this: defeat France first, then turn to fight Russia. But the direct border between Germany and France was heavily fortified, and Germany couldn't break through directly. So they decided to go around attacking from a weaker point. The weaker point was the border between France and Belgium. Therefore, Germany first occupied Belgium to attack France from there. Belgium was a neutral country at that time. When a neutral country was invaded, Britain could not stand by. Britain sent its military to help France and Belgium fight back against Germany. More and more countries got involved, right? And you might want to ask, a neutral country like Belgium was still attacked? Germany said, we need to borrow your line to attack France. Belgium said, no, you cannot come in. Germany said, then I have to destroy you first. Belgium had a very tough time. France at that time truly could not win against Germany. Germany advanced very quickly and almost reached Paris. The French government even fled the capital. If Britain had not come to help, Paris would have been occupied. So the European countries, big and small, began to fight like a chain reaction. Everyone had a side to support and a side to fight against. The fight wasn't only in Europe. Their colonies were also at war. Now, when Germany attacked France, did Italy come to help its ally? In this entire process, Italy didn't say or do anything from beginning to end. They didn't lift a finger. No matter how fiercely the other countries fought, Italy did nothing. It seems they honored their secret agreement with France, which stated that if France and Germany fought, Italy would not help Germany, and indeed, they did not help Germany. This was completely unexpected by Germany. On the other front, Russia could not hold back the German attack. However, Russia did manage to seize a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The battles were not only on land, but also on the ocean and in the air, where large-scale battles broke out. Britain's naval power was relatively strong, but Germany's submarines were very powerful. So on the ocean, a balance of power formed between Britain and Germany. During World War I, air combat appeared for the first time. Before this, there were no airplanes. Not long before World War I, the airplane was invented. So in the First World War, people saw airplanes fighting each other for the first time. Germany's air force was also very powerful, and not just because of its airplanes. What's more, the German designer Zeppelin designed a very awesome airship called the Zeppelin. This airship existed before the war and was mainly used for air transport. After the war broke out, Germany used it for reconnaissance and bombing missions. It was very formidable. This airship launched about 50 bombing raids on London. The situation at that time was basically that no matter which country it was, if they took one step back, they would face the danger of their country being destroyed. So all these countries concentrated all their power on the war. No one was left to form the line. Everyone went to factories to produce bullets and artillery shells. So what did they eat? They ate their existing supplies from previous years. And they also transferred food from their colonies. Were the colonies not at war? The colonies were also at war, but not as severely. Germany's overseas colonies were very quickly subdued by Britain and France. After fighting like this for about 3 months, the neutral Ottoman Empire suddenly joined the war as an ally of Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Ottoman Empire had a long-standing grudge against Russia, so of course they would help Germany. There was another reason the Ottoman Empire got involved, because of Britain. As we just said, Britain was always interested in the petroleum in the southern Middle East. So after the war started, Britain sent troops to the south to try and occupy this place, leading to war with the Ottoman Empire. Thus, the Ottoman Empire was forced to get involved. And so they fought for more than half a year, and still no one could tell who would win. But during this process, one important thing happened. A huge neutral country was dragged into the war, which was America. Was America a neutral country? At the time of the Great European Battle, America was in a neutral position, thinking, what happens in Europe is not my business. How was America dragged into this war? It happened like this. On May 7, 1915, the British ocean liner, the RMS Lusitania, was sunk by a German submarine near the coast of Ireland. This ship used to be the biggest passenger ship in the world. Later, a ship that was 1.5 times bigger broke its record. the Titanic. But the Titanic sank in 1912, earlier than the Lusitania. This Lusitania was attacked and sunk by the Germans in 1912. There were approximately 2,000 people on board. Around 1,200 people died, and among those, 128 were American citizens. This ship was traveling from America to Britain. At that time, Britain was at war. Did people still go? Yes. Actually, it was secretly carrying military supplies. Germany had warned America a long time ago. Your ships should not come to our war zone, whether it is an American ship or British ship. If it comes into our zone, my submarines will definitely attack you if they discover it. Then, why was Britain bold enough to seal this ship from America? It was because the Lusitania was very fast. It was said that submarines could not catch up with it. In fact, a submarine could not catch it under normal conditions. So why was this ship sank by a submarine? It was because on that day there was very fog. The ship had to slow down. Once it slowed down, it was discovered by a German submarine. A single torpedo was launched and sank it. Because 128 American passengers died, the US government issued a strong protest to Germany. At this time, international public opinion also began to condemn Germany because this attack killed many ordinary civilians. From this time, in May 1915, America secretly began to organize its military forces, preparing to deal with Germany. Meanwhile, another originally neutral country, Italy, saw that Germany's situation was not looking good and suddenly ended its neutral position to launch an attack on the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They had already made a secret alliance with France, partly because they also had their own conflicts with Austria-Hungary. Now, with public opinion leaning toward Britain and France said, Italy immediately made its position clear. I am with Britain and France, and attacked the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now let's go back to another front. As I just mentioned, Britain, in order to secure the petroleum resources, was fighting the Ottoman Empire in the south. But the Ottoman Empire's military power in the Middle East was very strong, and Britain could not win. So Britain came up with a very cunning idea. They decided to first join forces with France to attack the Ottoman Empire together. However, if you want to cooperate with France, you have to give some benefits to France. So Britain made a secret agreement with France saying, after we defeat the Ottoman Empire, how shall we split its territory? Let's divide it up in advance. Even though they hadn't started the main attack, they decided to carve it up first. After they finished dividing it, then they would attack it. The plan was based entirely on this agreement to partition the Ottoman Empire. After securing their certain interests, France was willing to send troops. Later, Britain came up with another strategy. They realized the Ottoman Empire, while strong externally, had a critical weakness. It was eternally very fragile. The empire was constantly plagued by eternal revolts because it contained so many different ethnic groups. Its previous disintegration was also due to ethnic groups demanding independence. Serbia and Bulgaria had already broken away, so Britain targeted this weakness. In the Middle Eastern lands of the Ottoman Empire, the inhabitants were mostly Arabs, so Britain told the Arabs, if you help me overthrow the Ottoman Empire, this land will belong to you, and you can become independent. The Arabs thought this was a good deal, so they helped Britain by starting an uprising within the empire. Once the Arabs rebelled, the Ottoman Empire, which originally had the advantage, was suddenly thrown into a disadvantageous position. By this point, the war had already been going on for more than 2 years. Logically, everyone should have been entering a period of exhaustion. After fighting for so long, food was almost finished, and ammunition was nearly depleted. It seemed impossible to continue, but the reality was completely different. The further the war went, the more intense the fighting became. One reason was that more and more countries got involved, making the situation increasingly complex. Another reason was technological development. During the process of World War I, technology was constantly advancing, inventing all kinds of new weapons designed to kill, like tanks, massive steel warships, and machine guns. There were guns before World War I, but you had to reload after each shot, and armies would reform their lines. The range wasn't very far. However, as the World War I continued, the machine gun appeared, which could mow people down in rows. The efficiency of killing humans became higher and higher, making the war more and more brutal. By December 1916, Germany discovered a major problem. It was running out of supplies. It was blockaded by Britain, France, and Russia, and its overseas colonies had been seized by others, so it had no way to get new supplies. But Britain had plenty of supplies, with America constantly sending their food, weapons, money, etc. So Germany thought, I had to find an ally outside this encirclement to help me cut off the supply route, or to attack Britain and France from the outside. Mexico came to mind. Why Mexico? Because Mexico had long-standing territorial conflicts with America. So in January 1917, Germany sent a telegram to Mexico. This telegram was called the Zimmermann telegram. It said, "Shall we make an alliance with each other? I have strong submarines in the Atlantic Ocean that can interrupt British supplies and force Britain to sue for peace within a few months, provided America does not join the war. Once America joins the war, we can supply you with huge amounts of funds to help you attack America and reclaim the lands you lost." Actually, the southern part of the US, New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona all used to be part of Mexico. Germany was essentially saying, you can get these places back. We will coordinate from inside and out. However, the content of this telegram was intercepted by British intelligence. Britain immediately told America. America was furious. You blew up my ship and killed my people, and now you want to team up with Mexico to attack me? By February 1970, America was actively preparing its military and was ready to truly enter the war. Part of its military preparations were deployed to the border with Mexico, and other parts were prepared to be sent to support Britain. When American forces were moved to the Mexican border, Mexico realized America knows about this. They sent a telegram back to Germany, refusing the invitation. But only 1 month later, in March 1917, the Russian Empire, having been destroyed by years of war, faced a severe economic crisis. The people were suffering unbearably. This led to the February Revolution, which by the modern calendar occurred in March. The common people revolted, fearing that if the war continued, they would have no food to eat. This eventually led to the Russian Tsar being forced to abdicate, and a provisional government was established. The main reason Russia couldn't hold on was that the country was simply too big and shared borders with too many enemy states. On one side, Britain, France, and Italy were pressuring Germany, but on the other side, Russia was fighting entirely on its own. Its battle lines were extremely long. When they fought Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire would attack them. The Ottoman Empire was also fighting Russia, and when Russia attacked the Ottoman Empire, Germany would seize the opportunity to attack Russia. Therefore, Russia was in an extremely painful and difficult position. In March 1970, even though the February Revolution overthrew the empire, it is a great pity that the new provisional government still insisted on continuing the war. Since the people's livelihood did not improve, only 9 months later, the October Revolution occurred in November 1970. This October Revolution established the predecessor of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Russia government. However, this new Soviet government did not have the support of the former aristocracy or the vast regional powers. In essence, this Soviet government had violently overthrown the previous regime, but the common people in the surrounding areas didn't understand what was happening. They asked, why was the government changed again? This meant that the masses did not support the new government. Very soon, a civil war broke out across Russia. This eternal turmoil in Russia, which began in earnest by April 1918, essentially meant they withdrew from the World War I battlefield ahead of others because they were now fighting among themselves. Actually, at this point, the situation was advantageous for Germany because Russia had retreated from the war. However, the British, with the help of Greek and Serbian forces, managed to push back the Austro-Hungarian Empire by September 1980. Meanwhile, inside the Austro-Hungarian Empire, severe fragmentation was also occurring. The Austro-Hungarian Empire also consisted of many different ethnic groups, and these peoples all began demanding independence one after another. The result was that the country could no longer function. By November 1918, the emperor's authority had collapsed, and the various regions began to govern themselves independently. So in November 1918, the Austro-Hungarian Empire also proposed an armistice to the Anglo-French alliance. After seeing the Austro-Hungarian Empire withdraw, the German Navy refused to continue fighting and asked for peace, reasoning, since our allies are finished, what are we still fighting for? This pressure eventually forced the German Empire to abdicate. On November 1918, Germany surrendered to the Allied powers, announcing the end of the World War I. After the war ended, all the Victoria countries went to Paris to attend a conference known as the Paris Peace Conference to decide how to deal with the defeated nations. The Victoria countries included Britain, France, America, Italy, and Japan. Although Japan didn't fight much, it was still considered a victor. The defeated countries were Germany, Austria-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. The Paris Peace Conference lasted for half a year. Finally, exactly 5 years after the beginning of the World War I, which started on June 28, 1914, the defeated countries were forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919. The Treaty of Versailles was a ruthless carve-up of the defeated countries by the victors. Furthermore, not every Victoria countries had an equal share. The small countries were pushed aside, and only the major powers got to divide the spoils. The bigger countries were Britain, France, and America. The Treaty of Versailles forced Germany to accept full responsibility for starting the war. This meant Germany was forced to bear all the losses. Germany was forced to cede territory. Essentially, it lost 20% of its land. Furthermore, many of its mineral-rich regions were placed under the control of Britain, France, and America. They declared, from now on, all the mineral mined from these areas will belong to us as part of your war reparations. The total reparation bill was set at 132 billion German gold marks, roughly equivalent to 2 trillion in today's money, an absolutely astronomical figure at the time. It took Germany 92 years to pay it off completely, with the final payment made to France in October 2010, amounting to over 60 million euros. Of course, all of Germany's overseas colonies were also partitioned among other nations. The treaty also imposed very strict and complicated restrictions on the German military, such as limits on the number of soldiers and number of officers allowed. Besides Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was also completely dismantled. It was broken up into today's Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Slovenia, Croatia, and other countries. The Ottoman Empire was also later dismantled, leading to the formation of modern-day Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and other states. The Arab nations did gain independence, as Britain had promised them. They successfully became independent states. One important reason why World War I could end was because many countries were experiencing eternal chaos and could no longer continue fighting. Another very important reason was the outbreak of the Spanish flu in the later stages of the war. The number of people killed by the Spanish flu was far greater than the number killed in the war. While 18 million humans died in World War I, it is said that the Spanish flu killed as many as 100 million people. From many years after First World War finished, most European countries struggled to recover from the dual devastation of war and plague. Only America, which had barely participated in the fighting and saw no war on its own soil, managed to gain relatively better benefits from the victory and develop rapidly. The country that suffered the most severe blow was Germany. The loss of territory, and the massive reparations filled the German people with a deep sense of humiliation. This planted a seed that would later grow into World War II. Although Germany suffered greatly, in truth, there was no country involved in the war that was not devastated. Britain lost 1 million people, France 1.7 million, Italy 1.24 million, and Russia 3.3 million. Even America, which participated very little, lost 120,000 people. In total, the victorious countries suffered 10 million deaths. Not to mention the defeated countries. Germany lost 2.5 million, the Ottoman Empire 3 million, and Austria-Hungary over 1.5 million. Combined, the defeated countries lost approximately 8 million people. Did the defeated country lose fewer people? Yes, but that's because there were fewer of them. The victorious coalition consisted of more countries, so whether victorious or defeated, no nation truly gained any real benefit from the war. The ordinary people certainly gained nothing. Furthermore, the end of the war did not bring harmony and happiness, but only left behind more seeds of hatred. This hatred would eventually lead to more battles. In fact, one event that occurred in World War I serves as a proof that no other people want the war. On December 7, 1914, at a time when Germany and Britain were fighting most fiercely, both sides were dug into trenches, shooting at each other. Because it was December, it was especially cold, and many people froze to death in the trenches. Neither side was willing to yell and itch. At this time, the Pope in Rome appealed to Germany and Britain, saying, "Christmas is coming soon. How about we have a truce to celebrate the holiday?" But both Britain and Germany refused the proposal from the Pope. However, on the battlefield itself, a very touching event occurred. On December 25th, Christmas Day, a German soldier slowly walked towards the British trenches and shouted, "Merry Christmas." At first, the British side thought the enemy had some ulterior motive, but after confirming he was harmless, a British soldier climbed out of trench and shook hands with the German soldier. He gave the German soldier a bar of chocolate as a gift, wishing him Merry Christmas in return. The German soldier then offered his own cigarettes to the British soldier as a Christmas gift. Later, more and more British and German soldiers climbed out of the trenches. They shook hands, talked, and began exchanging food and drinks. In the end, the German and British soldier even organized a football match. The match ended with Germany defeating Britain 3-2. These events verifies that between themselves there was no inherent conflict. If there had been no war, they might have been very good friends. But this friendship only lasted for a week. The soldiers on both sides had to return to their trenches. They had to pick up their rifles again and fire at the very men who had briefly been their friends. And this kind of brutal war lasted for 4 long years. This was the First World War.